So she, in some ways, is like a female Jimmy Carter, where things go so badly that the party loses the White House for the next 12 years.
Our subjects. They are the vanquished, 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 vanquished.
Hello and welcome to The Vanquished. I have an awesome guest, comedian extraordinaire, Rebecca Kaplan. Rebecca, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So, we're going to do about First Lady. Usually we talk about presidential losers, but today we're going to talk about someone that who was a First Lady and many consider the first woman president. We're talking about Edith Wilson today. She was Woodrow Wilson's wife. Woodrow Wilson, I don't know how much people know about him. I'll give a little more background in a second. But he had a stroke in November. He had 16 months left in his term. He never recovered. And basically his wife was just president during that time. And everyone just kind of forgot about it and moved on. Until today, we were going to talk about her. One reason I think it's a vanquishment is the Democratic Party falls apart. They lose all their goals. They had goals after World War I. Anything Woodrow Wilson was working on is completely squashed. And they lose the White House for 12 years. So she, in some ways, is like a female Jimmy Carter, where things go so badly that the party loses the White House for the next 12 years. Rebecca, what did you heard about Edith Wilson before this?
No, nothing.
Exactly. They're trying to cover her up. Also, Anders is incapacitated in this episode, and I am taking over him and running things as I see. I am the Edith Wilson of this podcast. So it's very meta in that way. There's a couple books on her. Finally, books are starting to come out to talk about her. There's one called Madam President and another called Untold Power that I use as sources. They kind of basically say different parts of the same story. If you're going to write an Edith Wilson book, you write about, you talk about how she really was pretty much running things. Edith Wilson, a little background on her. She's from the South. Like goes back to like Virginia gentry, but I think her family had been kind of gotten poorer after that. And she is not too interested in dudes, but eventually this guy convinces her to marry him. And then he dies. Then they have a kid. He dies. Usually the woman doesn't show, but somehow he dies. So she's got a kid, and then she's taking over this failing jewelry company. She's like, okay, I'm independent now. I'm doing my thing. Then what happens is eventually she meets Woodrow Wilson, who's already president, and he's smitten with her, and she's kind of excited by the job, and they develop a romance. Then when Woodrow is incapacitated, she's going to take over.
No, I mean, that's like every woman's dream to just like have their, I'm sure, especially of that time period, to just have their husband's power.
This is a good point. This is before women could vote. So there's a woman president, but women can't vote. Now, you'd think Edith Wilson would have supported letting women vote. No, she found the suffragettes annoying and disruptive, and she did not support them. She thought it should be like left to local stuff or whatever. So she was not, she was not too, she was very much power for her, but not for anybody else. Yeah, it is weird also, that she's like, well, I already did it with the jewelry company. Now I'll do it for Woodrow and just take over the country. She didn't have a lot of schooling. That's an issue, is later she's signing for Woodrow and she doesn't have, she has bad handwriting. She has like very childish handwriting. So they're like, oh, we're getting, the president's orders are coming from like a childish handwriting. I guess back then you expected the president to be distinguished. We're in our third straight term of presidents who are not particularly mentally capable. Back then it was a little bit more unique. I do see a lot of Biden parallels here, where Biden was not all there at the end of his, or maybe the whole term, depending on what you believe in Jake Tapper's book that we did on the Patreon. And so there's a lot of people running stuff. And then with Trump, it's like he was probably never really able to be mentally a president. If the country and the world needed to be saved by Trump reading 3 pages of text and understanding them, it would not happen.
Or remembering 7 nouns.
Rebecca, what do you know about this period? What do you think of when you hear about Woodrow Wilson?
Well, this is probably embarrassing, but it is like the name of the high school that the Glee kids go to.
That's actually insane. Yeah, he's a terrible racist. The thing with Woodrow Wilson is amazing president name. In The Simpsons, Ms. Krabappel, Bart basically catfishes her, and he calls the guy Woodrow because Woodrow is a very sexy name if you're a young boy. Like it sounds like like wood and strong and erections or whatever. So he's got that sexy name. Woodrow. Anything you remember about Woodrow Wilson that takes place before the era of Glee?
One of like the presidents that like didn't he like put things in motion to start NATO?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, NATO is post World War II, but yes, what Woodrow is doing is he's inventing
wait, sorry. I don't mean NATO. I mean the UN. Like he put
the
in
UN.
like
Okay,
the
great.
League of Nations.
He comes up with the League of Nations, which becomes the UN. But he wants America to join it, and he's going to have some issues. And then so he basically an American thinks of the League of Nations, and then America doesn't join it because of Woodrow Wilson's ineffectiveness and the stroke that he's going to have. So Woodrow Wilson, I think he's one of the most overrated president, horribly racist. He comes in, he gets elected because Teddy Roosevelt and Taft, and we're going to do a future episode on this, get into a fight and they split the Republican Party. So he comes in and he wins 2 close elections. He's the only Democrat to win between Grover Cleveland, who we've done, and FDR, and that's about a 40-year period. So the Democrats are not doing well. He comes in, he's from the Deep South, but then he ends up being in New Jersey. He's the president of Princeton, and then he's the governor. He's got all that. And then he comes in and it's the progressive, or he does some progressive things in the first half. The first half of his admin when is kind of going awry. Like he's doing progressive things. They start the Federal Reserve. Before the Federal Reserve, J.P. Morgan used to have to bail the country out when it ran out of gold, which happened twice. So then he starts that. So they do some good progressive things. And then his wife dies. I'm not sure I'm saying that's why his administration went off the rails, but his wife dies, and he's very much in an American president situation where he's got the dead wife, and he's a widow, and he needs to start dating. And also then World War I is coming up. No one wants to fight in it. And initially he keeps us out of it. He even runs for re-election on he kept us out of war. And then one day he's like, okay, we got to go to war. And then after that, he's a tyrant, and he cuts up all kinds of freedoms, and he's just terrible. Also, there's a pandemic, Spanish flu, the most deadly thing in human history. He never addresses it. Rebecca, have you heard of Birth of a Nation? His friend wrote the book, and then he screens it at the White House. It was the first narrative movie, but it's about the nation. In that case is the Klan. And this movie restarts the Klan. The Klan had been gone for a while. For 40 years, the Klan was gone. I think they were still doing the same racist stuff, but they didn't call themselves the Klan because the Klan was gone, but black people couldn't vote or anything. But he restarts it. So it restarts the Klan. He's like, oh, I didn't know what the movie was going to be about. And it's like, you read the book, your buddy wrote it. He's just a horrible racist. So that's the thing. Edith Wilson, we're going to say some good things about her, but just know she's a horrible racist. No one from Asia was allowed to, it was later. But it was a horrible racist. Asian people are banned from immigrating. So Edith is then single. He loses his wife. He's very upset. He's a wife. Woodrow Wilson was a wife guy. I guess he becomes a wife's guy. But he's very sad she dies, and he says, "My God, what am I going to do?" So that is kind of that is sweet there. That's another problem is his wife dies August 6, 1914. Rebecca, what do you think is the soonest that would be appropriate to marry?
I mean, I feel like in 1914, you're like marrying someone else tomorrow. You're like, I gotta have my shirt pressed. I need like a wife slave to I could imagine that the wedding was within 6 months.
That's a real good point. He doesn't do it that quick. Now, the one thing is you're very much right, I think. If he wasn't president, so he's already president, he's president at this point. He's president 1912 to 1921. So if he wasn't president, he wouldn't have needed that. I think he had servants probably to help with that. So he doesn't quite. So he marries her within a little over a year, but it is considered scandalous how quickly he gets back together with her. He gets together with her. He writes her a lot of love letters. They go golfing together a lot. I don't know if golf was new at this point, but Woodrow Wilson is the kind of guy who golfs. Golfing is definitely an evil person activity.
I've gone mini golfing. Is that evil too? Or is it like a little evil?
Okay, this is okay. I gotta say, I'm very much pro mini golf. Problem with golf is it takes up a lot of land that would be beautiful parks. and it gives it solely for rich people. And like, it's reducing the amount of people that can be on the land, and they don't pay good taxes. That is the problem with golf. It's very much like Woodrow Wilson. I think he was born like towards the end of the Civil War, but like his ancestors were like probably had like plantations and stuff like that. So it's very much like you have all this land to yourself, and then no one else gets to use it. It could be vegetation. We could be growing food. We could grow food on all the golf courses. And one of the many ways we could end hunger. People could live. People could build housing on them. I do hate when I'm hiking. You'll go hiking in like these nice parks in upstate New York, and then there's a fence where the golf course starts. So they're cutting your hike off for this. Yeah, the golf. It's all very expensive. Yeah, and there's no way to play golf. It's always like $100 or something. It's very. It's a lot. I haven't played in a long time. Since I become a good person and have stopped golfing. And thank God for the golf, because I could not hit the ball too far. Okay, so she's very she has a weird attitude towards his presidency, where like she's clearly turned on by it and she likes it, and then also like she's going to get very involved in it even before he has the stroke. But then also there's a thing of she's kind of does want a normal marriage. And she's hoping that they can wait till after the election and that he'll lose in 1916 to get married. So she's hoping he'll lose. I think once they get married, she doesn't hope that. And there's reason to believe he will lose because he barely won the first time. The Republicans had the majority, but he is going to squeak the election out afterwards. And the big problem is also like World War I is coming. We're trying to trade with Germany, even though we're neutral in World War I. Right now, Germany and England are fighting. In World War I, we're trying to trade. We're neutral. Germany's attacking our ships. People are dying. Some of the ships even have British weapons on, like the Lusitania. And it's all just kind of pulling Wilson into war. And the dirty little secret also in World War I is America had loaned a lot of the money to like the Allies, to the British, French, and French side. So to collect our money, we were going to need to get involved and help them win. And it also just happened. Then the communist revolution happens in Russia. So Russia drops out. And Germany's actually kind of has a chance to win. And then if America doesn't jump in. So that's a big part of why America jumps in. And Woodrow's able to sell it, but it has absolutely no benefit to the American people or the world. Because of the failure once he has the stroke. Okay, so we said, she doesn't support suffrage. Other presidents had married in the White House. Grover Cleveland had, but he wasn't a widow. He had just been a single guy. He married an extremely young woman, but people were okay with that. He's like, Grover Cleveland married a 19-year-old he'd known since she was a baby. People were fine with that. People were like, that's great. We love her. But with Edith, they like Edith, but there is a thing of maybe this is too quick. There's bawdy jokes being made. People saying she's a tradesman's widow. She's not good enough to be in the White House. And then they made a joke where after he proposed, they say, when Wilson proposed to the second Mrs. Wilson, she was so surprised she nearly fell out of bed. So they're slut shaming her a little bit.
I have not seen that movie, nor have I heard it.
Okay, so have you heard of The West Wing?
Yes.
So The West Wing is like the TV version. It's Aaron Sorkin. Before there was The West Wing, there was Michael Douglas plays the president. And it's Aaron Sorkin. So like eventually he's going to like lose the election, but eventually he makes a speech so good that everyone in the country is like, we don't like the evil fascist guy. Yeah, anyhow, so it's very much that kind of thing. And the issue is that in that movie, the woman is intimidated by sleeping with the president. But Edith was pretty tough, so I don't think so. Oh yeah, also just a couple of things about this period in case anyone likes Woodrow Wilson. Lynchings are peaking. This is the era when they built all those stupid Robert E. Lee statues. Robert E. Lee's gone 50 years. They're like, we're like at the peak of the Civil War. The South was of being pro-Confederacy. The Confederacy is gone, but they're pro it. And we're at the peak of keeping black people down by building statues. So all those statues are from this era. Black people can't vote. He doesn't care about self-determination for people. He's also about like the 14 points. Everyone's going to get all these, making the world safe for democracy, but it's not for non-white people. And yet it is weird. He's from the Deep South, and there weren't that many Deep South presidents. There's Zachary Taylor very long ago. And then there's no more till LBJ is sort of Deep South. He's Texas. He's very pro-civil rights. And then Jimmy Carter is Deep South, but he's pretty good on civil rights, though not good on actual things that would help black people economically. So they get married December 18th, 1915. Honeymoons, I think, took longer then because like you'd have to travel so slowly. I'm not sure. Yeah, but 12 days later, they're on their honeymoon, and then the Germans attack a U-boat, and they have to come back the honeymoon gets cut short. Yeah, I guess, yeah, Rebecca, if you were married to the president, would you want to like go attend the meetings with him, or would you want to go just go like just chill?
Everyone wants to be in the room where it happens, right?
That's Edith's attitude. Yeah, she makes her schedule where she can be in as many meetings as possible. There's even a thing of where it's actually could be a little bit of a spy thing. She's just his girlfriend, and he's telling her like state secrets about the war and stuff like that.
What do you think it was like to be like the president and be single? Because like you can't like date in a normal, like there's no Raya app or something.
I think it was just parties. I think that's how you would meet people. Is you would go to like this isn't the Victorian era, but like it's kind of that vibe. I think you would go to a party and then you would just tell like there's a woman at the party whose job it is to like find out if you're interested in anybody, and you would tell people. So I think you'd have to go to a lot of parties. It would be annoying if you were more introverted. It is good there was no Epstein back then, because he might have gotten sucked into an Epstein's Island situation.
I know, like, you probably don't know the answer to this, but like, what year did the statutory age become 18 in the US?
Interesting. See, it's better if I don't know. That was a trap to see if I know crazy age of consent things. A little bit earlier than this, Thomas Edison is a problematic guy. He's a contemporary of Wilson and Edith. He is like 30 something before he gets married. He meets his first wife at the local high school. If you could go to the local high school, find a cute 16-year-old girl who you should not be talking to, completely against this, and then ask her parents and marry her if you like owned, like a nice factory. So he does that. That woman eventually dies. Not his fault that she died. She becomes an adult. She has kids. She dies of a disease. Happened a lot. Then he's like, I need another wife, back to the high school. So he's like he's like closer to 40 at this point. He goes back to the high school. He might be over 40 and gets another 16-year-old girl. So yeah, that was very normal as a guy, an older guy, didn't matter how old you were, to be looking at teenage women as future wives.
I mean, I'm just obsessed. Like I mean, could you imagine being at, because I know, like, I'm sure they did meet at parties, but like, could you imagine how in demand you are as like the president of the United States? Like, I'm sure like his being single put Pride and Prejudice to shame,
So he's tall. Okay, the height is important with these guys. You want your president to be tall. Our shortest president ever was James Madison, but I mean, he wrote the Constitution. So you get a pass. So he's 5'11", which I think was a little bit like 5'11" now. It's like, okay, that's kind of mediocre. I think 5'11" was a little bit taller then, and as president, he was. I would like to read about other women who were throwing themselves at him. Was he getting hit on at the funeral? That kind of stuff. Yeah, that would be a good comedy scene. It's just he's at the funeral and we have all these women hitting on him. So she's into it. She's going to the meeting. She's very much into all this stuff. And there is an issue if he has some health problems, blood pressure. There is incidents where like he gets a little sick and she has to like kind of manage things. She's not running the country at that point, but there is hints of it. So then we win World War I. He wins the war. I assume he's very popular at that point. He's won the war. A lot of pride. America hadn't really. I don't think America had never gotten involved in a European war, and we came in and we won it because everyone else was kind of tired, and we defeat Germany's on its last legs. We come in. We win World War I, and Wilson is like, he's an ego guy. And he says, I'm coming in. I'm going to personally go to Paris. This is before flying. He couldn't fly there. You have to take boats to Paris to negotiate the treaty. So it's going to be very much tied to me. And also, I'm not going to be doing anything else during that time. And then Edith is like, I'd like to go. And Edith comes. She's the first lady to travel overseas.
I'm like very obsessed with these luxury transatlantic liners of that time.
They're amazing, yeah. The crashes. So this is a few years after the Titanic, So I would say it's like a better version. It's probably a better version of the Titanic. I mean, they're definitely traveling in luxury, but there is a thing of you're out of communication. I mean, there's a telegraph exists, phones exist. I don't know that you had much on the boat. I think most things are happening by letters. So like the president basically took months off of the job to only work on this. So he's personally going to negotiate this treaty, and he wants to make it seem like, okay, now we're going to have democracy. And it's doomed to fail because, like, Britain's not giving up its colonies and all that. Also, America had a lot of debt it wanted to get paid. And the countries that owe the debt are going to make Germany pay them. So it's all kind of fraught. But at least we're going to get this League of Nations, and everyone can at least meet and talk about stuff, and America's going to be part of that. And he is able to negotiate the League of Nations. Now, another thing that happens is the Spanish flu's raging, and I've read a Spanish flu book, and of course, that book says he got the Spanish flu, and he recovers. This is before he gets a stroke, but the book does say that like he was never the same. But so maybe the Spanish flu is the reason he eventually kind of falls apart, or not. That's a little controversial. But anyhow, he gets sick in Paris, and it's not, it's he's up and down in Paris. He's not great at it. I don't think he had a lot of diplomacy experience. He was a college president. He was a governor. Doesn't have years of foreign policy experience. So he's a little bit arrogant. He's seen as a hero, but then the elites are not buying it. So he comes home and he's trying to sell this treaty. And the problem is that to ratify a treaty, you need 2/3. And the Democrats, I think, have a good amount of votes, but the Republicans can block it with 2/3 in the Senate. The Republicans can block it, and the Republicans are very well run. They got this guy, and we're going to talk about a little more later, Henry Cabot Lodge, who's in charge of the Foreign Relations Committee, and he's going to try to block it. And it's not that he doesn't need too many votes to do that. And initially, he's acting like he's going to help Wilson, but he's trapping Wilson, and he's going to very much find a problem with the League of Nations. Henry Cabot Lodge, for you Vanquished heads, his son is also named Henry Cabot Lodge, and that was Nixon's VP candidate in 1960, who eventually is a member of the Vanquished. So Henry Cabot Lodge is a father of a member of Vanquished. He never ran himself. But just know there's two Henry Cabot Lodges, and they're not the same person at this time. And yeah, Henry Cabot Lodge is good at running things. He doesn't, for some reason, run for president in 20, but he very much helps set the stage for the Republican dominance. He's also very much on the side of, there's Teddy Roosevelt, who's on the same side as him. And Teddy, even at some point, seems like he's going to run again in 1920, but then he dies. So but Henry Cabot Lodge is the guy behind the scenes, and if you don't at least play ball with him, they're going to be able to kill the treaty, because they only need about 33 votes in the Senate to get rid of it. So Wilson is like, and this is very much a thing I wanted Biden to do, is like, well, if your policies aren't good in Congress, take it to the people, go drum up support, use the bully pulpit. And Wilson is willing to do this. He says, okay, well, you got, and it's weird to do this about a foreign treaty, about a League of Nations, which is not something the average person maybe would be that affected by. He says, I'm going barnstorming. I'm taking trains all across the country. I am going to convince people to love the League of Nations. So he goes on this tour across the whole country, and it's very tiring, and his health isn't great. Again, he probably had the Spanish flu, and he's getting worn down on this tour. And they're going all over the country. Anything funny that I want to mention happened on the tour. It's an ill-fated tour. They go all over the place. They make it to like the Southwest. He's starting where like he's getting worse each time. He's sweating through his clothes. He's getting headaches. He's slurring his words. Like he's breaking down. And part of him, I think, is thinking that he could be Jesus. Like that if I die, that'll save the League of Nations. And I'll be like League of Nations Jesus. Oh yeah, I will say the big thing Henry Cabot Lodge didn't like is he thought the League of Nations would make it that America would be forced to declare war without Congress approving. Every treaty is kind of just what you're willing to do. I don't think anyone could make you go to war, but he makes this as a thing that's taking away our sovereignty. It's a little bit like how NATO is. Where NATO, if Germany got attacked, we would be forced to go to war. So he's kind of thinking of it like that, but still you could back out.
I was like just talking like earlier with my brother about how ineffective the UN is. I know it's not the same as like the League of Nations, but it's sort of like the evolved version of it. But
oh yeah, I think it's okay to hate the UN from the left. The UN, there might be a lot of problems and stuff's not binding, but and just global capitalism, all that. But the UN said, well, these 5 countries won World War II. And 2 of them didn't even win because France and China got conquered, but we included them. And these guys won the war before we created this. So then they get a veto forever. So then you can't go against these countries. So like, it's not, the nations aren't united. It's very much like a book that actually came out around when the United Nations was, Animal Farm came out around when they were starting the United Nations. All the nations are equal or united, but some are more united than others because the 5. Yeah, I don't know if the League had that. The League of Nations ends up just becoming Britain and France run it, and they do a lot of colonialism. They start a lot of mandates. For instance, the Palestine Mandate, and many, many, many things go wrong with that. I've talked about on other podcasts. But yeah, so
wait,
it ends up. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. The Palestinian land was granted to Israel by the League of Nations, not the UN.
Okay, it's it's a little complicated. Okay, so the League of Nations, England does the Balfour Declaration saying it's going to be a Jewish state. And then under the League, they do these mandates, which is like this country is not ready to be independent. The people of the country want to be independent. The Palestinians want to be independent. The Syrians, the Lebanese, or Lebanon, I haven't part of Syria. All these countries wanted to be independent, but it says these guys are not ready. And basically, the line is that you're not in Europe. So Turkey is in Europe. So Turkey gets to be independent, and Syria is like we're literally next door. And the line between continents when there's not an ocean is pretty vague. Syria's like we're next door. We're basically the same shade of beige or whatever color people are as the Turkish, and they're like, no, France wants you as a mandate. You get to take over. They want to take over Syria. You guys are not white. So anyhow, the League of Nations gives the mandate to everything south of a certain line. The line is determined by England and France called Sykes-Picot. They give that line, the line below it is called Mandated Palestine. It's under England, but England is trying to make it a homeland for the Jews. Then eventually, after World War II, the UN does this thing where they partition it, but the partition is supposed to be a Palestinian state and a Jewish state. But the Jewish state, the people who wanted the Jewish state are very much ready to conquer it and make it into Israel.
I'm drawing like parallels now. Like it seems like Woodrow Wilson put like a crap ton of harm into place, putting things in motion to found the League of Nations that like then colonized a lot of the Middle East, and then feel like there's just been generations of suffering.
The Middle East is under the Ottoman Empire. So they're not countries. They're, provinces of an empire. I think one of the provinces was called like Syria, Palestine. I don't know the exact borders, but these were all provinces. And they're pretty independent. They have a good amount of freedom. They don't love it. They got to pay taxes. Sometimes the Ottoman Empire is a little bit like, well, we'd like you to speak Turkish, not Arabic. They don't like that. But it's overall pretty good. And then England convinces the Arabs to revolt. And the Arabs revolt. England says, we'll make you independent. But instead, they make them League of Nations mandates, and which are basically colonies. And maybe America could have stopped this, but instead, America doesn't join the League. Also, then Lenin and Russia don't join it. They consider it a capitalist thing. So there's not a lot of balance. And England and France get a lot of power until they both lose all their power in World War II. And then it's between America and Russia kind of come back as the rulers of the world. So yeah. So this stuff's bad. World War I in general is bad. It ends some empires, but everything done afterwards is bad. They make a bunch of ethno-states. They make a bunch of mandates. They weaken Germany, and then Germany, eventually Hitler's going to take over, and Germany feels like it should never have given up in World War I. It goes pretty bad. I will say the only thing is that the world was bad before it. So it's not like things were. The Ottomans were better than than England and France at ruling those areas. But it's not like everyone was under empires and there was a lot of colonialism before. So it's not like things were so great before World War I either. He goes all over. He's in Montana. He's on the East Coast. He's everywhere. He gets to like the Southwest, and he's just tired. He's slurring his words. He's getting headaches. He's not going to stop, though. Again, he thinks that maybe if he dies, he's League of Nations Jesus. People are obsessed with being Jesus. He's getting asthmatic attacks. He's trying to, because he's literally going to where these senators are from and trying to convince them. There's a slow Sunday. He relaxes, but there's still intrigue. And then finally, I think he's actually making a speech, and he just starts slurring his words more. And then afterwards, they realize he had a stroke. And he's even like, let's go on. I want to die for this. And they're like, no, actually, if you die, that'll actually hurt the League. That she convinces him. So she convinces him to rest, and they cancel the rest of the tour. Woodrow. So now Woodrow has this stroke, and then the idea is that he's going to rest and recover, but he's never going to recover. So at some points he has some mental faculties, but he's never really physically there. And also he's kind of, the only thing he's really able to do is be stubborn. And this reminds me a lot of Biden, where he's not really strong enough to run the details, but he is strong enough to be stubborn, particularly with things like with Gaza. So and then they get this Dr. Grayson, and actually, when Garfield was shot, the doctor ended up kind of becoming the guy in charge. But in this case, it's the doctor and Edith, they're going to kind of take charge. And she a lot of what she's going to do is she's going to say, "I'm taking care of his health," but really, she's also kind of being president at the same time.
For the time period, if you're like a woman with ambition, you sort of need to grab it where you can. And, it sounds like she might have had some regressive beliefs, but so did her husband. And why shouldn't the person ruling the country with regressive beliefs be a woman operating
Nice.
a stroke victim like a puppet?
That's the thing. Now, yeah, I don't know what her political beliefs were, but I believe she's carrying on what she thinks his are. So she wasn't going to, like, if this had happened to FDR, maybe Eleanor Roosevelt would have been a little more left because she's had a little more chutzpah, Eleanor Roosevelt. But Edith is very much doing what her husband wants. There is even a chance with Edith that she might have been asexual. Or possibly into women, because we have no evidence of it. But if she was into women, there would be no evidence. But she's doesn't seem too into like getting with a husband, and she seems to get with them only when they pursue her, and it's like kind of a way to, and then like they just really push. So there is a thing of she might have been more interested in running the country for him than with sleeping with him. Another weird thing about this marriage is there's never a normal time in this marriage. He's either president or incapacitated the entire time of the marriage. At the end, he's not president, but he's just kind of convalescing. And then he dies a few years later, and she lives another 30 years. I don't think she remarries. So a big thing with Edith Wilson is, why was she able to do this? In the books do mention she's very tall. She's 5'9". So there's this tall woman, her husband may be dying, and you try to go to visit him, and this tall woman comes at you, and she's like, my husband is sick. He needs to be left alone. And her presence does help. So she has the presidential height. I don't think I mentioned it, but yeah, Hillary was only 5'5". That was an issue. Kamala was 5'2", so she actually would have been our shortest president. Kamala would put heels on it. She had the voice, and she would have the presence. But still, actually being 5'9", I think was helpful. I don't think a 5'3" woman would be able to do this.
I don't know. I'm sure, people respect height more for sure.
The books will describe her as good looking. The books will interestingly say that the photos don't do her justice, which I both believe and I want people to say about me when I'm gone. That he was just really hot, but like none of the photos or video podcasts quite made him look as hot as he was. There's a doctor who says something like, just kind of take care of him and they thought the way to recover from a stroke was just rest. You need to keep everything away from him. You need to kind of just make decisions for him anyway. Is what they're saying. Don't let him exert himself. And she takes that to heart. And the big question is, well, what about the vice president? Should we let the vice president run the country? Now, today we have the 25th Amendment where the cabinet could have voted and put the vice president in temporarily. There's no mechanism then. So it was a little bit more vague. But it was a little more vague, but there was still kind of a thing where it would say that the VP takes over in case of death, resignation, or inability to discharge powers of the office. So there was a little bit of wiggle room there, but it hadn't happened. It didn't happen. A lot of times the VPs would be distant figures. They didn't get along with the president. And if they showed up at the White House, everyone think the president was about to die, and they'd be seen as usurper. So there is like a weird barrier against the VP. There's a little bit of this with Kamala and Biden, where Biden's kind of out of it and Kamala's not in the inner circle.
It probably would have been good for everyone involved if he had stepped down and just let her be president. I mean, obviously he should have resigned well before the point that he did, so that he at least somebody else could have run for the Democratic nomination.
So yeah, and it's in the doc I shared with you. I don't know if you've seen this picture, but we have a picture of this guy, and he looks like the goofiest guy, the goofiest nerd with a mustache. This VP guy. So his name is Thomas Marshall, and the thing with Thomas Marshall is, he could have been president if he wanted to, if he pushed hard enough, if he got people behind him. But this Thomas Marshall guy does not want to step up. So there is a thing of Edith kind of wanting to step up, and Thomas Marshall not wanting to. I think it does also help that Edith chose to marry. She's the one first lady, or one of the few first ladies who married a president, and then she becomes president. So she chose to get in the president game. She didn't just marry. Even like Hillary married Bill, he was like some guy at law school who spoke well, probably, or whatever. So there is some of that she wanted to marry a president. But yeah, he does not. Thomas Marshall is just not the guy. Yeah, is not the man. He's big in the smoking the cigars. He was the son of a doctor, he's also, another problem with him is I have to look up how tall he was, but he was only 124 pounds. So he's thin. I don't think Edith was overweight, but I think there's a decent chance Edith outweighed him. Like if they had actually had to get into like a physical fight for the presidency, I think she would have been the favorite, and maybe they would have even been in a similar weight class. And that would have been, oh man, that would have been amazing. Yeah, that would be funny. Yeah, if Kamala and Joe Biden getting into a fight for the presidency, a fist fight for the presidency would have been pretty funny. He had been an alcoholic, and he had quit, which was good. But he was governor of Indiana, and then Indiana, by the way, was a swing state back then, so we used to have to pretend like Indiana mattered. And he had kind of, he had kind of overstepped on something, so he was very worried about overstepping. And then the thing with him is he's balanced. He's like regional balance because Wilson is like kind of the South and the Northeast. And I think, okay, so they're disagreeing about something with World War I early on in like, let's say 1914-ish. And then Wilson gets mad at him and cuts him off. And then Wilson calls him a small caliber man. So Marshall is basically like out of the loop for a bunch of years before 1919. And then they're like, well, because he runs for re-election. And they're like, well, you don't even like this guy. And he's like, well, the VP doesn't matter. Just put him on the ticket again. So they put him back on. I guess Trump did put Pence back on, but their rift was afterwards. Yeah, but it would have been kind of funny if Trump had ran with Pence again. Because, Pence would have, in 2024, would have been like, I don't even care, whatever. I'm not going to die. So, yeah, he keeps him on. He's insignificant, but yeah, he's the guy. And then and people are trying to tell him, you should go to the president, whatever. But he says something like, I'm not going to seize the place and then have Wilson say, get off, you usurper. There is also a feeling of Edith saying that if he loses the presidency, Wilson will just want to die as well. Like he won't have anything to live for. So there's a little bit of that. But yeah, basically, a part of this is just that Marshall just did not have the guts. At one point, he thinks that he's going to have to be president. He hears about it he's at a dinner, and they're like, the president died. He goes back and he even tells everyone to pray for him. He's going to be president. And then it turns out it's a hoax. And he's like, thank God. Yeah, I don't know. I like to think of myself as if I was VP, I would be the guy. I would step it up.
I feel like the first ladies have to do all this stupid stuff, like pick out China for the White House and bake a pie or whatever. I wonder if we should switch those roles and have the first lady be the one who steps in.
Okay, who would you rather have been president after Obama? Joe Biden or Michelle Obama?
Yeah, Michelle.
And then same thing, Al Gore, who loses, or Hillary. I don't know if Hillary. I have no idea if Hillary would have won in 2000. That's an amazing counterfactual. Anders would love that. I will. Yeah, Anders loves the. We will do counterfactuals later though. But yeah, Anders would love. Would love us. Yeah, and now from Anders not being here, I do see it is hard to step in. So yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad Anders will be back for future episodes. It is hard. Yeah, it is hard. It is much easier to be the first lady of this podcast. Okay, so Marshall's a clown. He doesn't. Yeah, the clown. We talk about that. Yeah, Marshall's not doing it. And then the thing is, if Marshall comes in, he also said that he was going to, they tell Marshall, just say you'll kind of do what Woodrow would have done, even if you don't do it as well as I said it. You know what I mean? He's like, no, I'd be my own president. And everyone's like, we don't want this asshole to be president. He's not necessarily as progressive. And then also the thing is, if he's president, he's going to fire everyone around Woodrow. He's going to put his own people in. So the key with Edith is she knows how to talk to men. So when she talks about it, she'll say the men in the room, like the doctor, think I'm doing the right thing. And then she'd also say something like, well, I'm just a woman and I want my husband to recover. You're jeopardizing his recovery. She'd talk very medical about it, even though she's literally firing people. She might even be involved in hiring a Secretary of Agriculture. She's getting bills vetoed. She's doing stuff, but she's pretending like she's all for his health. And it is very hard. It would be very hard, especially because she's so tall. So a tall woman who's trying to keep her husband alive, it is tough.
Do you think there's any chance that she poisoned him?
That is, I like that. Yeah. Pod Save America did a fictional series about her I might listen to for the Patreon episode. But yeah, that is interesting that it was kind of a coup. The one thing is that I don't know that she does it, and she does do the president stuff. I don't know. She somewhat does it reluctantly. It is kind of miserable for her, I think.
Yeah.
It's clearly not going to go that well. And that's the problem. So I don't think she wanted it, but I like that. Yeah, I'd like her to have poisoned him, take over. And then it is interesting that Harding, I think, I don't know if this is true, he may die in the arms of a mistress. So there may be a thing of women trying to kind of sneakily take over the presidency. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so then, so Edith does eventually write memoirs about this, but she calls herself what is she? She calls herself a surrogate, I think she says. But she kind of paints herself as more of a caretaker. So she does write memoirs, but she's even keeping up the lie then. So she's very much just saying she's kind of acting as, I think the word is surrogate is what she says. She neglects things. There is a thing of like they're getting a lot of mail, and Edith has to like try to run things, and like they hand her stacks of mail, and she just like puts some aside. So there's like important government business she puts in a drawer like it's an overdue bill, and like she'll like I'll get to it, and then no one opens those letters till 1952. They go through the archives. I'm not really sure why it was 52. Maybe once they passed the 25th Amendment, they were like ready to like deal with this kind of thing. But I definitely could see that if I was president, being like having important things in the drawer. You know what I mean? Yeah, like, like, okay, I'll deal with that later. Like it would be tough to kind of manage everything.
One time, like I got an email saying that I was like going to fail a class in college. Ooh. And I totally like ignored it and put it out of my mind. Like, and then I failed the class, and I was like, well, you never told me.
Email was still new when I was in college, so I'd never learned how to check my college email, college email. I had like a personal email, and then my one class, they would email us assignments to do to like get us used to email, and I just got an A-, but I never did any of those assignments. So otherwise I was perfect in accounting, as I would appear to be. Okay. So yeah, at first he doesn't see anyone for like 5 months, and then eventually he's good enough where they can kind of prop him up and he can make like little appearances, and stuff like that. So eventually he gets a little bit better, but his brain is never going to recover. And she's very much says, I must let him survive. Yeah, she's anxious to survive. One guy, this guy Lansing, the Secretary of State, says we have a petticoat government, so he kind of realizes it. And what's kind of cool is, so the previous Secretary of State was this guy William Jennings Bryan, a 3-time member of the Vanquished, and he gets fired because he doesn't like he's a little too against going into World War I. And Edith is like, yeah, fire his ass. Woodrow's still around, but Edith is very much into it. So she's a little bit of a warmonger, I mean, a little in common with maybe a Hillary Kamala, where they're down to do some wars. And then Lansing is like, well, they can't do cabinet meetings with Woodrow, and then they're not going to do cabinet meetings with Edith without Woodrow. So Lansing is organizing these secret cabinet meetings, and then Edith finds out and tells Woodrow, and Woodrow and her fire him. So she gets the Secretary of State fired. I mean, they make him submit his resignation, but yeah, she is firing people. They almost get discovered, this guy Albert Fall of New Mexico. He's like trying to get rid of Wilson, and he almost discovers it. There's a guy kidnapped in Mexico, and this Albert Fall guy's like, we got to go to war with Mexico. I need to see the president. They push back. She says, you're going to kill him. Eventually, though, they have to organize like a meeting with Albert Fall to kind of, and they have to do a route. They have to prop Wilson up on the good side, and they sit him down in the chair before the meeting, and they organize this meeting. And like Albert's hoping that Wilson will like do something really bad, like something bad will happen, and then they can say get rid of him. And nothing happens, and they're able to pull off the ruse. So there is some like comedic stuff where it's very close, and they're able to kind of pull it off. Very much Weekend at Bernie's. Have you seen that movie, Rebecca? I've never seen it.
I'm familiar with the concept.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's very much Weekend at Bernie's. They're propping him up again. Biden. I know in the Tapper book at some point in 2023, Biden only worked on Ukraine. So anything else other people were doing. And then like by the time for re-election, he's like, I don't really know about anything else. He only knew how to talk about NATO. But yeah, Woodrow is eventually healthy enough to, like I said, be stubborn and say to fire this guy, you can't have cabinet meetings without me. Yeah, so they come to the bed. Yeah, they're able to kind of make him look around in the bed. At one point, the Queen of England visits. She's not the sovereign. She's like the white. She's called Elizabeth, but she's like, I think she's the mother of Queen Elizabeth, maybe, or a generation or two before. And at some point, she notes that he's in like a sweater with holes in it. And everyone gets mad at Edith for not sewing his sweater. So there's all kinds of things. Okay, so anyhow, so now to the vanquishment. So she's president. She keeps up the ruse. It's going to work out. She's getting rid of Secretary of State. It's all kind of going all right. But the then the other thing I want to say, they do the State of the Union, and all this stuff had happened in the past year. There's the State of the Union for 1920. There's inflation. There's unemployment. There's explosion of bombs in Seattle. There's all kinds of crazy. There's the Palmer raids going on, which Palmer isn't a member of the Vanquished we're going to cover, but he's doing all kinds of fascist stuff. And like Edith doesn't know to put this stuff in the State of the Union, so the State of the Union seems completely out of touch. And there's very much of them both kind of being in a little bit of a bubble. But anyhow, yeah, they keep the ruse up. But then the treaty, they still want to get the treaty done, and it comes down to where there's the three groups. There's the people who hate the treaty, the people who will approve the treaty, and the reservationists who they have to convince. And Lodge is basically saying, put some kind of rule in this article of the treaty, Article X, which sounds kind of suspicious. Sounds like an Elon Musk article, where you basically say that with the Article X, we don't actually have to go to war if we don't want to. We have to, Congress has to approve it. Just put some language in. It'll, by the time it ends up mattering, we'll all be dead anyway. But put some language in, and there's room for compromise. But then Edith has to ask Woodrow, and Woodrow's like, no, fuck Lodge. Like, whatever, I'm the president. Woodrow's even at some point saying, like, I'm going to run for re-election to prove how popular this all is. And she's not going to overrule her husband. And the treaty ends up failing, and the League of Nations then just becomes this colonial thing. Maybe it would have been anyway, but yeah, it all just falls apart. And Lodge is victorious.
League of Nations definitely sounds more like a supervillain thing.
It is interesting. In the new Superman, they call it the Justice Gang. So I'd like to call it the Gang of Nations. I did. That Superman. Yeah, if I don't like Superman, but if you just like Israel, that Superman was very cathartic. And that one, the League of Nations might not have worked, but Superman just kind of coming in and balancing out hostile powers seemed to work in the movie. I will say that. So Superman honestly in that movie is the UN if it can kind of kick ass.
I don't know what movie you're talking about.
Oh, sorry, in Superman, the new Superman movie.
Oh, the new one.
Yeah. Rebecca's like, I was not forced to see a superhero. You're not a superhero then, I would assume.
I'm not big into action movies, so
No, it makes sense. He, that's all good. Yeah. So, Superman, and he actually, yes. There's a Netanyahu figure who gets his because of Superman in the movie. It was very exciting. For me, that was the only reason I saw it, because I am not a Superman guy.
Did you hear the episode of This American Life about how Superman took down the KKK?
I've heard the story, but not that episode. But that is great that he did that.
It was basically I think they just made it completely. They made it seem completely ridiculous and clownish to have the KKK masks, so that the kids of these guys that were in the Klan would read these, and then they basically shamed their parents out of doing it.
So the KKK is big after Wilson. Wilson helps revive the KKK. And they're still big in the 20s. We did an episode on the 1924 Democratic Convention where half the people there are in the KKK. And it becomes a big issue. Listen to our Al Smith episode. And then then the KKK starts fading. And I think this is in the 30s. This might be this Superman cartoon. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so Superman ultimately does defeat Woodrow Wilson. And there's a lot of parallels. Yeah, the League of Nations is what Wilson thinks Superman is, but it's actually super racist. And we need an anti-racist Superman. So that's a good point. Edith. Oh, yeah, a lot of bills are getting signed. Edith will also just let bills pass without his signature, which still counts. Then at some point, Edith does have him do the veto, but she guides his hand to sign it. They passed this terrible alcohol banning bill that Edith and Woodrow don't like, but they're not strong enough to defeat. Where they did prohibition. Listen to our prohibition episode, they ban people thought prohibition was gonna be hard liquor. They ban anything even close to liquor. Sauerkraut is technically banned because of this bill. So if we had a real president, maybe he could have gotten at least a 1 or 2% alcohol being allowed. But anyhow, so the League, they mess up the League, they get vanquished. The League of Nations is, which sounds like a bunch of bad guys, and frankly, it was. Maybe it wouldn't have been, but it was. Wilson is just too stubborn. They lose the League of Nations, but then they build Wilson's confidence up with these. They have a bunch of cabinet meetings, and he's like, you know what? Still got this. I can still run. So Wilson Wilson thinks he can still run. He's like, I'm going to run in 1920. Because this would have been a third term, but you were allowed to run for a third term back then. There was no constitutional amendment. This is pre-FDR. So Wilson never drops out, and he's secretly trying to do machinations, or at least leaving it open, And there's one dude who's like, I'm going to nominate Wilson. And everyone is like, you moron. If we wanted him, we would nominate him. He barely can function. His wife is the president. We're not doing this for 4 more years. And the campaign definitely would expose, because then he would have a running mate who could a opponent who could expose it. So they have to stop that. But yeah, and Edith is not willing to tell Woodrow that he can't read. It's like, I'm being president now, but I can't even tell you that you're not capable of being president. So it doesn't end up happening, but they don't get a good, they don't really organize themselves well, and they've lost a lot of popularity. They've been defeated. There's no way to come back from it. And they lose. This guy, Cox, loses pretty badly to Harding. And then the next 2 elections are also blowout. So they win for 12 straight years. They build up they I don't know if the Democrats put it on better, but they do nothing to help the common man. And then the economy is very unbalanced, and the Great Depression happens. Also, there's no protecting in Europe. There's no kind of keeping Germany in check or helping Germany before Hitler takes over. We're stopping colonialism. They're all just isolated and stupid. And the world is much worse off because Edith and Woodrow got it all vanquished. So in that way, it is very much a vanquishment. I don't know, Rebecca, what do you think? The world would have been better off if Woodrow doesn't have the stroke. Basically, if someone was able to kind of get the League of Nations through, either it's Woodrow or Edith or even the VP comes in and steps it up.
One of the things that really also led to World War II is like forcing Germany to pay such crazy reparations, because like that really tanked the German economy. I mean, like, it's, I mean, I feel like you can't separate out one thing from all of the other things. Like, it all like work together to create these conditions.
Yeah, and America, like I said, America got in a lot of it was because we wanted our war debt paid, and Germany was going to have to pay through the So America is there's definitely a way of working it out where America is the bad guy, even without even pretending to be away. A lot of the bad stuff would have happened, and it is a good point. But the Weimar Republic, they have the hyperinflation, they're broke. There's even a thing before Hitler takes over, they're mostly being governed by like a presidential decree. Is it the president? Is that the office name? But there's a thing where I think they do have a president. So like there is a thing where they're not that democratic the years before Hitler. Now Hitler makes it way worse. But there is a thing of and it is honestly kind of similar to in 2024 where Biden is senile. The Democrats are like, we're not listening to anything you guys want. We're not helping economically or Gaza or whatever issue you care about, but you have to vote for us. And then Trump coming in off of that and being like, it's not democratic. And then Trump's like, I can actually make it less democratic. I'll take away your Medicaid and all that. So I do think, I don't know if there's a way it could have worked out better. I would like to see a better VP, because like when McKinley gets shot, he's got TR who's ready. So I guess if I could go back, maybe I would, in 1916, I would find some guy who could be a good VP. Actually, interesting counterfactual. In 1920, the VP nominee was FDR. Maybe you could somehow make FDR the VP nominee in 1916. And then he could become president. He could start his 12 years earlier or whatever. Actually, maybe he could have served longer, because he only gets out when he dies. So that's interesting, actually, if they could have made I'd like to actually, when we do more about the 1916 election, I'd like to see who else could have been VP. But we usually have these terrible, the VPs were usually pretty, they was just balancing out regionally. So the nice thing with Edith is she's buried next to him. And on his birthday, they do a tribute to him. But then they also do a tribute, because he's a president. They do. Okay, they do it. And I think there's something where they do a tribute to if you're president on your birthday. But because she died on his birthday in 1961, she lives a lot longer. She even meets Kennedy. It's all. I think she lives long enough to meet Kennedy, and then in 1961, and then she died before Kennedy. But there's a thing where they put flowers on her grave the same day as him, because his birthday is her death day. So it is like they're honoring her as also the co-president.
Do you think that, like, if she could have run for president at the time, that she would have won?
I think in 1920, she would have had to save the League. It is interesting who could have been a woman president. Obviously, Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor Roosevelt either running in 44 or being VP would have been amazing. That would have been awesome. Eleanor Roosevelt. There's a woman, Frances Perkins, who's awesome in the FDR administration. She's the first female cabinet member. She also would have been a good candidate. Edith, I don't know if I like Edith enough. Edith is good in that the big thing that Edith did is she was able to be president. I don't know that she was a good president. Now, no other woman has been president, and no other one was even close. They couldn't vote back then. So it's impressive. But the far as like then, if they're like, well, as a president, how was she? Kind of lousy. That is the one thing. So I do think the Republicans, and it is hard to win more than 2 in a row, and the Republicans kind of had the base, and they had kind of brought the progressives back in the fold. TR's back in the fold, then he dies, but whatever. So I think they would probably still lose. But it would have been fun to see her run and her being like, I'm actually president. That is kind of the plot of this movie, Dave, where a guy who looks like the president has to take over and the president is sick. And then eventually he afterwards, at the end of the movie, is going to start his own political career and eventually become president. So it is. Yeah, we've given you a lot of good. Have you seen Dave?
No, I haven't.
It's awesome. It's a great 90s movie. I don't know. There's no action. You might like it. It's also really cool because it's like very like, it's not Aaron Sorkin. It's like weaker Aaron Sorkin. But Dave is like, I'm going to fix the budget. And he brings his friend who's like a tax accountant in to fix the budget. And then they're able to like talk special interests out of taking money. It's like, it's the most like centrist vision. Oh, I got to rewatch that movie. Yeah. Dave, Dave, honestly, to me, counts as the Vanquished. We may do a Patreon episode. If you're a fan of Dave, please comment on this episode. Yeah, please, before I do the final segment, please, subscribe, comment, tell friends, all these things. We're really growing. We're this is the most independent the media can get. Just two people in a room, or in some cases separate rooms. Okay. So I'm going to now go through a list of, we're not counting Trump, but we're counting times we had an incapable president. It's happened a lot, okay? John Adams once took a 7-month vacation to Massachusetts while president. So he wasn't very much capable at that point. James Madison got the White House burned down. At least the day it was getting burned, I would call him incapable. William Henry Harrison had a month where he was dying. Didn't know what was going on. The entire Andrew Johnson administration, he's our worst president. He counts. He might be the only president who makes Woodrow Wilson look not that racist.
What about Andrew Jackson?
Yeah, that is a very good point. He was a slave trader. Andrew Jackson is our most racist president because there's a lot of presidents who own slaves, but I think he's the only president who traded slaves. He's the only president. He's one of the only presidents who's murdered people.
He created the Trail of Tears.
Good point. Trail of Tears. Yeah. Oh, horrible. Yeah. The thing with him is also like, well, you're like, that's an ethnic cleansing. Well, he had done other ethnic cleansing before. He had done them in during the War of 1812, he was just doing them in Florida. He was like Hitler of Florida. And honestly, that makes sense because that's a tough thing. Andrew Jackson is so horrible. Now, Trail of Tears, he's not a Vanquished guy, Andrew Jackson. But Martin Van Buren was technically president when it actually happens. It is Andrew Jackson's fault. So we are going to eventually do Martin Van Buren, who does the Trail of Tears, and then eventually tries to rebrand himself as an anti-slavery guy. So we are going to do him at some point. Okay, then Grover Cleveland had a secret surgery at sea and was incapacitated for a little bit at that point. Garfield, I said, I've done Garfield. Me and Anders were on an episode of Well, There's Your Problem. Please listen to that, where we talked about his stuff. Woodrow Wilson post-stroke. FDR, the last year of his life, was in and out. He could step it up a little bit, but he was not all there. So, and that's an important year. That's 1944 to early 45. Ronald Reagan at the end was probably Alzheimer's-y. Bush on 9/11 was flying around. Cheney's taking over. That doesn't count. And then Joe Biden, it depends on when you count, but Joe Biden definitely counts as well. So it's happened a lot. We've had incapacitated, to some extent, presidents quite a lot. Even honestly, Trump after J6, the end of his term, he almost did the 25th Amendment. He was kind of like barely able to do anything. I mean, now we have the 25th Amendment. We haven't really ever used it. There is the thing of like, oh, Biden was getting a colonoscopy, so Kamala's president for a day. I think there's things like Dick Cheney was technically president for a day, and he wrote a fun letter to his grandkids. There's like it's cutesy, but we've never actually gotten to use it. And I do hope it happens. I hope again, nothing violent, but maybe Trump's brain stopped working, and JD Vance has to take over and he doesn't know what he's doing, and then we're making couch jokes. And ideally, so hopefully, God, if you're listening, hopefully we get an incapacitated president soon because, we could certainly use it. Oh, Rebecca, tell people where we can find you and your work.
You can find me everywhere at Rebecca T. Kaplan, Kaplan, like the SAT test prep company.